How's it going?
Good, Lee. How are you?
I'm wonderful today. You know what today is?
I do not know what today is, Lee. Will you tell me?
Today is another day to do a podcast.
Wow. And this is FNO InsureTech.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Welcome.
Wow. What a coincidence. We're doing a podcast, and it's a good day to have one.
It is a good day to have one.
And it's a particularly interesting day to have a podcast because today I am in Miami, Florida.
You are in lots of different locations. I have only done podcasts from Waco, Texas.
I'm a rambling guy. guy.
Yeah. So tell me, what is it like to do a podcast in Miami?
It's pretty bueno. I'll say that.
Is it?
It's pretty bueno. Yeah. I am on the 9th floor of a beautiful hotel overlooking the Atlantic Ocean in Miami, in South Beach. And it's about as nice as that picture you have in your mind right now of what I'm telling you. But more interesting than all of this stuff that we're talking about is our podcast today and our guest that we have on our show.
Yeah, we have a great podcast today. This is one I've really been looking forward to for quite some time. Today we have the founder of Dronebase on, Dan Burton.
Yeah, I first met Dan several years ago at a property information report conference where Dan had done a session on his show. And I'm on his show. He'd done a session on his company when it was just really starting out.
Yeah.
It was a great idea. It was very exciting, and now it's the largest provider of commercial drone flights in the world.
Yeah, it started back in 2014 with this vision that he had. The guy has a fantastic story, and it's really amazing how far it's come since 2014. So I think we have a lot in store for us today, and I think it'll be a really good listen.
Dan is super smart. He's a visionary, and he's also a veteran,
right?
And those are all key parts of his story that have come together to form Dronebase. So without further ado, if you don't mind, Lee, if it's okay with you.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Then let's just go straight into that interview. Here it is, our interview with Dan Burton, CEO of Dronebase. Listeners, I know you're all excited to hear. In fact, if you clicked on this on your podcast player, you already know who our guest is. But we have a super special guest today, and it's a privilege to have with us Mr. Dan Burton, who is the CEO and co-founder, correct?
Yeah, the founder. Yep,
founder of Dronebase. Hi, Dan.
Hi. Great to hear from both of you. And yeah, Rob, I'm in Los Angeles, so typically don't get too jealous of anybody else's location, but I think you might have us beat here. That sounds pretty fantastic.
I might have to take some pictures. To include in the show notes for this one. But we're like I said, we're real happy to have you with us. We're real excited to have you with us. Dronebase. Dan is a mover and a shaker in his industry, and runs one of the largest company of his kind. Let's get rolling and jump in, and
Sure.
And let's start with this question, Dan.
Sure.
Can you give us the 30-second, 1 minute on Dronebase?
Of course. Yeah. And again, thank you both for having us on. Privilege to be talking to both of you. Yes, as you said, my name is Dan Burton. I'm the founder and CEO of Dronebase. And very simply, Dronebase helps enterprise customers make better, faster decisions about their most valuable properties, assets, and work sites by providing fast, affordable, reliable drone data. Pretty simple. Our goal is to save our customers time, save our customers money by leveraging drone technology. we try to keep it as simple as possible.
And you bring that to a wide range of verticals, correct?
We do. So I would say that really, Dronebase as a company, look, we're in a new industry. There's a lot of problems in our industry, and kind of every one of them's hard. I would say that we're really laser focused on drone operations. And the way we think about that is that we have, Dronebase has the only API for drone services. And so what we think about is, can our API take requests for 1 or 10 or 1,000 or 10,000 requests for drone flights from unique addresses? And then, it's our mission in life to, like I said before, quickly, affordably, reliably return data sets, back from those addresses that can be relied upon and trusted by our partners and customers. And maybe to point out, as you say, I'd say that we're really focused on that drone operations piece, in really acquiring data with drones. For us, again, just kind of being honest, we try to be pretty humble as a company about what we are good at and what we're not. I think we're really good at drone operations, drone flights, capturing a data set right the first time. As you point out, that the operational piece tends to look pretty similar from vertical to vertical. We kind of think about it like drones as hardware and Dronebase as a company are best in the world at basically 1 square mile or less data capture. And I think our take, again, just being somewhat humble about what we know, I think we're really good at that, running drone operations at scale. But we do really like to leverage partners and others who are expert in really doing the analysis, providing the data takeaway from their unique industry. I mean, as you could imagine, it's unlikely that a drone company probably, it's like for us to be both an expert in running a mine water runoff survey as well as a construction, mapping survey, as well as, knowing to the 10th exponent how to make a determination about damage on a claim. That's maybe unlikely for one, drone company not in that vertical to really bring something incredibly novel to that analysis solution. I'd say that we're really focused on helping scale the operational piece of just making this data easier to acquire and use in your business. Sorry, long answer to a very short question.
It makes me think of something, and that is that when we started 470, we went into an industry that was well-established, with well-established competitors and well-established processes and procedures and thinking and philosophies. What's it like to start a business when there really aren't any other businesses like yours in an industry
Sure.
that doesn't even exist yet? What was?
Sure.
I got to ask you, what was that like?
Sure. So, I mean, I think that we can go a bit into my background, but I do think, basically I was in the U.S. military, was in the U.S. Marine Corps. I was not a drone pilot. I was an infantry officer, so just sort of a grunt on the ground. But during my time in the service, I watched this technology really do exactly what the computer did over a 50-year period of time, right? So when I got in, a drone was like a mainframe computer, a Global Hawk made by Northrop Grumman, costs $100 million, looks like an airplane, takes off from a runway, really replicated what an airplane would do. It took something like 55 people to operate, even though no one was on it. So, it was kind of an airplane comparable. Then I watched, you saw smaller systems like a Predator Reaper, still takes off from a runway, but a much smaller system with offensive capabilities. But then really much more common and the real game changers were these smaller, easier to use systems like a Scan Eagle that really could be sort of a battalion level asset. A battalion's about 800 people. And then, even getting down to sort of something like the Raven or Wasp, which was a company level air asset. So, something that we could send an infantry person who hadn't been to college to a training class. They come back with a little backpack drone. So maybe we got to, maybe not quite to the personal computer, not quite to the iPhone, but maybe to like, the mini computer level. I think the current state of play in the military is that, at least in the Marine Corps, they want a drone down even to the squad level of 15 people, where they want kind of an assistant squad leader to be the systems operator and their primary system to be a drone. So all that is to say, basically what I saw this technology do was this incredible sort of democratization and decentralization of access to air, where smaller and smaller and smaller units could essentially have dedicated access to air, get data and intelligence from the air, and make better, faster decisions about what was around them based on that data. And honestly, so I guess, again, long answer to your short question, but I really started just a dyed-in-the-wool believer, in this technology, and profoundly believed that it would commercialize. Didn't exactly know how that would play out, but I did think it would be very analogous in the commercial context, in the sense that, hey, look, sure, the Fortune 10, ExxonMobil has had an aviation department for the past 40 years, right? They can afford fixed wing, rotary wing aircraft, heavy user of satellite data. But what commercial drone technology would enable is a very similar transition, where really down to the property level, the worksite level, the asset level, this drone technology will allow you to, even at that lowest level, get access to air and get data and intelligence from the air that makes you help make a better, faster decision. So, again, a bit of a long answer, but I think that just seeing how, like, when we were in the military, it felt like we were living 30 years in the future, with this technology. And so it just felt like I had a sneak preview to how this might look in a commercial context as well.
Sure. I mean, it's cool that you were able to connect the dots between, here I am in the military seeing this. What about after the military, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, again, I think that's one of the most, if not the most rewarding thing we do at Dronebase. Obviously, the way that we operate is by having built the largest network of commercial drone pilots in the world. We work with a majority of the FAA's Part 107 community. And I think one of our favorite things to do is to help military veterans who are transitioning, who maybe picked up some of these skills in the military. Our view is that being a professional drone pilot is a kind of a new class of skilled labor. And so for us to be able to help somebody make that transition from military to civilian life and leverage some of the skills that they have, there's nothing more rewarding for us than that. So it's something we've really enjoyed about our work.
That's admirable, and we appreciate that. Which leads into your background. You have a really interesting story. It's not a real usual kind of track of how you went. Can you give us just a couple of minutes on your background? I know it includes the military, it includes Wall Street, and it includes Harvard. How in the world did that happen?
Sure. Well, they always make a few admission mistakes every year, so sometimes you get lucky on that stuff. No, I mean, again, just very quickly on me. Some folks in my family served in the military. Wasn't really contemplating joining the military, but lived in New York during September 11th. Kind of watched everything happen there. Kind of felt like I would join the service and then a few years later join the Marine Corps. Was stationed at Camp Pendleton out here in California, and just deployed first on a what's called a MU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, that went on ship from California to Asia and the Middle East, and then back, and then subsequently deployed to Iraq, was in Al Anbar province, and then deployed to Afghanistan. Started in Kabul on a training team, Afghan training team, and then inserted that unit we trained into operations down in Helmand province of Afghanistan. So obviously, an incredible experience, life-changing as you could imagine,
Sure.
and completely my privilege and honor to serve and to be with the great Marines that serve our country. I think, again, just be candid with you all, just because we're talking about starting companies. I mean, I think that my just had an incredible experience, but sort of my deal with my wife was that I would go in for 5-6 years, give it absolutely everything I had, and then try to do that first kind of commitment, and then leave. Just because I think it's, for me personally, I didn't want to do that job any day I couldn't give it absolutely 100%. And that's what I did for 5-6 years. And at some points to the detriment of your personal relationships or just being at home, et cetera. Right. So I think that in some ways you'll finding that level of that we were just so passionate and really loved what we did. But now you're able to find a little more balance in life between work and home, which is great. So again, just walking folks through this who might be sort of entrepreneurial too, just to be candid about everything. So, left the military, tried to think of, tried to really unpack like what technology is really impressive there. I was an infantry officer, so I really hope I'm not, emplacing machine gun positions or teaching people how to use mortars here in the United States. Although those are wonderful technical skill sets. Really, it was this technology, drone technology, and some of the other sort of big data work that was happening. We had access to over there were really just impressive new technologies. And if you think of so many of our industries are born, out of the military or government work. I mean, think about how many industries came from, innovations in World War II or kind of spun out of the space program. I mean, this just felt like another industry that was, again, we were living very far in the future. So yeah, as you pointed out, for folks who might be listening who are military veterans, one great thing that has been stood up is the kind of the post 9/11 GI Bill. So, I of course, it's also good to have a partner in life. My wife is much more level-headed and patient than I am. So of course, the day I left the military, I want to start a company. She's much more thoughtful and patient. So she said, no, why don't you learn something about, go to business school, even more ideally, could we pay off our debt before you do that?
Yeah.
So very, very thoughtful woman who I'm lucky to have. So yeah, as you pointed out, went to Harvard Business School and really tried to do all my research on drone commercialization there. Just kind of wrote my papers on that. Tried to kind of lean into that topic, talk to some folks at the engineering school who are working on that. I also just took computer science during business school, which I would kind of commend to anyone. If you're in an education program right now, you can always typically, cross-register for your for a computer science, and so was able to do that. And that's that was, I'm no expert in that, but I think just at least respecting that discipline and knowing kind of the ins and outs of code, just so you know what you're asking engineers to do and kind of asking folks to do if you're going to build a software heavy company is helpful.
Right.
So, I would kind of commend computer science to folks as well. And then as you pointed out, so I tried to start this company before I even started school, tried to drop out 3-4 times to start this company. My wife said, please just stick it out. Please stick it out. She had some debt from law school. I had a little debt from business school. And sort of the deal that we struck was if we could sort of get to debt free, it'd be, we could start this company kind of with full confidence. And yeah, as you pointed out, then I think that after business school, joined Goldman Sachs, worked in the kind of the technology, media, telecom group of the investment bank. And, in many ways, I think that consulting firm or finance can just give you that really, school is great, right? But practical application is better. And these programs have a great ability to take, let's say, military veterans and really give you an immersive skill set in, let's say, just the kind of the plumbing of finance, or just a really aggressive, business boot camp to get you caught up to speed. I hadn't ever been in the private sector before. So, spent a very valuable year there, learning and building a skill set, also just kind of doing a cash sweep to debt and putting every single thing towards, getting us to kind of debt free. And then once we had done a good year there, I just kind of couldn't take it anymore. Couldn't kind of take being on the outside looking in of our I just really wanted to get into this industry, right? So just left to start a company.
Even your wife couldn't restrain you any longer. I mean, just listening to your story, I'm like, well, I'm just picturing how much you're chomping at the bit, because you're probably seeing the opportunity, right, and probably waiting for somebody else to jump on it.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's, I just kind of saw this clear enough where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't let anybody else build this before I do. And so yeah, I mean, as you point out, look, I'm a big fan of just doing the work myself. It's like sort of, in the Marines, it's like you would not ask someone else to do something that you weren't willing to do. So before we even had a company, I had left finance and just kind of started to do this work myself. So probably, for us, that for me, that looked like kind of doing our first 300, 400 flights myself, as well as sort of kind of hunting down every single person in California who was interested in becoming a drone professional or a professional drone pilot. There's maybe about 300, 400 people at that time in a kind of an early community. So yeah, I was just basically trying to talk myself onto work sites, mines, telecom assets, even just simple things in real estate. I would go try to find like a military veteran who was running a work site, for example. At that point, this is kind of early 2014. Couldn't even give this stuff away for free, but usually folks would let me on and kind of just help them build a data set and just see kind of what would we do with this. Yeah, and just kind of got a good sense from companies, like helped a few companies buy huge drone fleets. That generally didn't seem to work out for them. In the context that, like, for the same reason that companies probably don't have a huge closet of servers collecting dust, they probably went to the cloud.
Right.
Similarly for this, it just felt like for companies, if they could just get access to the drone data that helps them make a decision, and not have to do some huge fixed cost investment in a system that maybe gets flown 20 minutes out of a 24-hour day, that seemed like how they wanted to consume this data. And then on the other side, I just had met a big enough community of folks who wanted to do this work professionally that felt like, okay, there's something here, there's a good fit here.
We saw that in our business. I don't know how many years ago, we're probably talking about the same time, that some carriers, in the initial excitement about drones, because as you know, there was tremendous excitement in the insurance vertical about drones early on.
Right, absolutely.
And many carriers went out and made enormous investments, and they were going to give a drone to every adjuster in the field.
Absolutely.
But I think that slowly but surely they kind of came around to exactly what you're talking about, or experienced what you're talking about. And that is, wow, is this really something that we want our adjusters to do, or can we just buy this piece of the puzzle when we need it?
Yeah, and I think that, and I mean, look, I'm obviously was excited to see some of those folks take a big early bite at the apple, but we were nervous too that was not how this typically was successful, just because you buy this giant drone fleet, and then this technology is like at 2x the obsolescence cycle of an iPhone, right? So you buy your drone fleet, and in 6 months there's a system comes out that's twice as powerful for half as much money. So it's tricky.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that, as you point out as well, like, really, I think we've been laser focused on just scale. Like, how do you scale this out? How do you help a company scale this out? I think that in the early days of the technology, for example, like, it is really easy to put together a proof of concept, one drone flight that I'm going to fly my VP engineering out. I'm going to fly my VP marketing out. We're going to do it on one house. The drone's going to go do this crazy, complete autopilot, no human in the loop, and it's machine learning, AI, buzzword, magic, spit out this thing, and great. So it's like, I think you get that. It's easy to get into kind of the innovation group level and sort of the proof of concept level, but to really scale this out, for any organization, to really scale this out, I really think you have to come to them with cost and time savings that a line business owner can put into their P&L and say, I am pulling out loss, I'm saving money, I'm saving time, and it's on a kind of a positive unit economics basis. So I think that's one thing we've really tried to. You say a new technology, a new industry. That's, I would say that we've really tried hard to look. I mean, it's an enterprise company. We've tried hard to just to have a real company in the sense that like we want to take revenue from customers and save them time or money. I don't care if it's not the sexiest use case. I don't care if there's still a little human in the loop. I don't care if we're really leveraging that customer or our partner's kind of expert knowledge as we should do. Really, like, how do we, until we are saving a P&L holder time and money, I don't think any of us are sleeping well at night. And I think that we got to our industry kind of has some really cool demos, but then just scaling this out. Okay, great. We did this one house, but now Harvey, Irma just struck. I have 10,000 properties that need a drone flight. Can you do that? Well, no, I can't. Well, okay, that doesn't really help, right? So I think being able to scale is as important as anything else. I think that's one thing Drone has been laser focused on from the beginning.
It's funny because Lee has been in the shoes of that drone pilot demo guy, right? That the VP of claims and the other VP of claims and the senior VP of claims and everybody comes to one house, in the field and watches a drone work and how a drone can help on a claim from that point A, all the way to operational in the field and on a mass scale is, in two entirely different things. I want to ask you, with what you were just saying, I've heard you referred to as the Uber of drones. Are you comfortable with that?
Look, I mean, it's funny because, what happens is I'll take like 10 minutes, I'll sit down with someone and for 15 minutes, I'll like try to explain what we do. And then they'll kind of like sort of get it, sort of nod. And I'll say, we're Uber for drone pilots. And they say, oh, okay, I understand. Got it. Makes sense. And so as much as we've had maybe early on resisted that moniker, look, I think that generally, isn't the worst analogy. I would probably, as we think about ourselves internally, I think of us more like maybe like a Twilio or an Amazon Web Service. I think that what we want this to look like is really simple inputs for the customer with really reliable outputs back to the customer, and just an ability to go acquire this data at really kind of magical scale, speed, cost, and time. I mean, the vast majority, as I'm sure yours is too, at 470, right? I mean, the vast majority of our technology really is solving this back-end, nasty, operationally complex kind of industry plumbing problem of, programmatically checking and clearing restricted airspace, algorithmically dispatching a pilot that has the right sensor, the right training, the right certifications, providing flight plans and shot lists that help a drone flight happen more and more automatically, and then having a smart pipe from the field that just ingests that data without a bunch of labeling or tedious tasks and gets it back to the customer, via our API as fast as humanly possible. So, look, I think in the sense that Uber is, you open that app up and for the user, it's just dead simple and gets you from point A to point B really easily. And there's a whole lot of back end problems that they solve to do that. I think that's what we're trying to do here. Just really, there's a totally new workflow. There's a lot of steps to it. And I think this is just a lead bullet blocking and tackling software engineering problem to automate all these back end processes. So for the customer, it just seems like magic.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, is that, as a salesperson, if I was on your sales team, I'd walk into someplace and I'd say, just think of it as the Uber for drones.
Relevant.
Because that makes it incredibly simple. What you, of course, approach it as a CEO who understands every step in the workflow. And it's incredible. And like you said, you're building it from the ground up.
Yeah, but and I've been humbled. I've been humbled enough to, as we said, it's like we used to have to grunt-proof things, or idiot-proof things, as we used to say, for us in the infantry. I think simple is better. It's like if you ask someone to describe your children, you'd go on like a 20-minute explanation because you know them so well. You know every single angle, every single you almost know too much.
Not my kids.
Both of them.
I'd say they're bums.
There you
Both
go.
of them.
There you go. And then it's a great. It's as simple as Uber for drones. But no, I do think that with any new technology, very good to be able to explain it quickly in a way a customer understands right away.
Yeah, and we were doing some research, and as you were getting further away from the founding of Dronebase to where you are now, it appears as though strategic partnerships have really been important to you. And I'm reading about partnerships with Hilton Hotels, Zillow, even in our industry. I believe in 2018, you announced a strategic alliance with Geomni.
Yeah, wow, big deal.
Yeah, talk to us about those, and maybe even about that Geomni one or other partnerships that you have in the insurance space.
Sure, of course. So, again, I think this kind of goes back to, as an organization, we want to be humble about what we want to do. A very small number of things extremely, extremely well. I think we are world class in running drone operations. I think by and large, right, we're very heavy on software engineering and operations. To be honest, we're probably underinvested in sort of sales, marketing, branding, advertising. We really want to make sure we're solving the core operational problem, and almost to our detriment, to be honest with you. We probably have undermarketed ourselves. But I do think part of knowing what we're really good at and understanding how hard it is to get good at these, as areas of drone operations, is having some kind of core humility about the partners that we're going to. So I would let's just take insurance, as an example. Look, I think we have tremendous respect for what any adjuster brings to the table, to their skill set, to their sort of art and science, to their kind of trained eye of how to make a determination about something, how to provide analysis. We also have some core humility that there are just some sort of incumbent winners in verticals that really folks spend a lot of their time already in someone else's tool. Verus might be an example of, hey, look, here's a company that's taking 20, 30, 40 different types of data streams, and they're synthesizing one end product in a platform that customers are already using. And so our thought there is, hey, is drone data and imagery an interesting additional data source? I don't know how much that nail costs. I don't know how much this sighting versus that sighting costs. I honestly don't want to. I don't think any drone company will be great at those answers. So, anytime we can just work a bit more simply with a great partnership, and we always really love to do that.
Right.
As I think about what we do, it's again, I think some good humility where we want to ultimately augment the experts in an industry, right? I mean, I think that we want, if an adjuster, if we can help an adjuster make better, faster determination of a claim with a great data set, if there's a way to get them, doing that on some of the harder use cases versus maybe the best use of their time isn't driving to 20 different properties that day, or we can just be a little better, faster, cheaper in the field.
Mm-hmm.
How do we equip with experts that are already in their field with a great data set that helps them get to an end decision? So yeah, I'd say and this is kind of it also for a smaller company or in a newer industry. I think again, just the more you can define what you need to do and get really, really good at it, and then the more you can work with partners who are already built great channels, leading brands in their industry. We're always happy to help serve as a great partner for this new technology and not feel like we have to entirely reinvent the wheel for eight different end vertical solutions.
Right. And I think it's interesting to know we got to know Dronebase well over a year ago, I would say. And the message you're delivering today of we want to do certain things fantastic, and we want to know those things that we're not as good at, or those that we're not focusing on. That message was delivered then, and it's delivered today. And I think it's a very important to understand that your vision is still there to be the best at what you do best, right? Obtain the images, take all the data and be able to create these APIs. I think that's a great vision.
Yeah, look, I think that's you. I don't think you'll hear that change too much from us. Like, there's no secret. I really think for us, we envision a world where there are millions, if not tens of millions, of commercial drone flights happening every year. We're hard at work just automating and tackling that, slaying that dragon of automating our own workflow. So it's like by the time we go 10 steps down that, 470 claims would be 10 steps deeper into solving that, your technology, your industry's problem. So
Right.
we're always just for helping augment, the winners in their industry.
Well, we do hear you talking a lot about being humble and about the company and doing what you do. I do want to talk a little bit about your actual drone force. Your
Sure.
actual base of pilots. I read a lot about it, and I've read that you've done flights in all 50 states and in over 60 countries. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. So exactly right. So it's a little more countries. It's actually 70 countries now. And yeah,
Okay.
and all 50 U.S. states. Yep. So again, that goes back to what I was saying in terms of, and I know actually, obviously knowing 470, you guys have wonderful geographic coverage as well. But we sort of think about, particularly in the United States, particularly in the English-speaking world, call that U.S., Canada, UK, Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
Australia, New Zealand. If you're working with this companies at scale, you really need to be everywhere to be helpful. So we think about it both in terms of broad uh, broad rural coverage, so we can get to that
Right.
one-off claim in North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, rural West Texas. And then we also think about density in an urban environment, right? So got it, we can cover broadly any U.S. address that's not in truly restricted airspace. But what happens when Harvey hits and Irma hits or Michael hits, right? Can you
Right.
scale up? Can you scale and be dense in a metro area where you really can still help that carrier get much, much faster about getting out to their claims, and you don't tap out on scale in a kind of a surge environment. So we think those are both important for us.
Yeah, and I think that's important to talk about today. A lot of our listeners work in the day claim environment, but they also work in the cat claim environment, and a lot of them are interested in ramping up. How are we going to be able to get inspections done quickly? And I've talked to your group in the past about ramping up and kind of what you do, but I was going to see if today you could talk about how would you prepare for a large hurricane if we need to get 1,000, 2,000 inspections out very quickly?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that it's a great question, and it's something we had to think about, kind of learn the hard way on a couple times in 2015 and
Mm-hmm.
2016. But I'd say what was really great for us was that in 2017, in Harvey and Irma, and then in the catastrophe situations in 2018, we really were the only company that was able to do drone operations at scale and not tap out, doing thousands and thousands of claims in those incidents, and not hitting a kind of a peak capacity at any point. So, yeah, I mean, look, probably the part of the business we talk a little bit less about, but we think a lot about internally, is really how we do our operations. We are kind of core committed to running all of our operations through the Dronebase pilot network. We've been building that out since 2014. We're just believers in that community, and we're believers that the best way to tackle these problems are with a distributed network of the wonderful professional drone pilots that are out there in the U.S. We think a lot about the progression of a professional drone pilot. As you can imagine, when we started doing this work back in 2014, that hardly existed, or maybe there was a very, very small community. Obviously, we kind of were familiar with that initial group of 7 333 exempt recipients. We track the 333 exempt community, which was a public, you could track that in a public way, but we tried to stay close to all those folks. And now we try to maintain as near perfect knowledge as possible on the FAA's Part 107 community. And as you may or may not know, over 120,000 people have actually taken and passed the FAA's Part 107 exam to get their commercial drone operator's license. And so, look, we think a lot. We probably don't publicize it too much. We think a whole lot about the progression of a drone pilot from someone who is kind of getting started in this work to really an enterprise pilot. And then, going from there more deeply into different verticals and sensors. So, we have our own sort of pathways. If you have a 107 and a drone, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know where you are. We'd love to know what systems you have. We'd love to know what certifications you have, et cetera. Like, that's a good starting point with us. That's far from the finishing point with us. We'll typically do several missions with a pilot, ideally, 10 plus, and then we'll start to consider someone for enterprise work. We then sort of have a kind of a hard tier of a Dronebase enterprise pilot. That's a smaller but a higher threshold group. We're doing background checks on that group. For all pilots, we're screening, badging them in all their systems, all their sensors. We have our own in-house training program. We'll also do qualifications on a vertical basis as well as a sensor basis. So trainings in insurance, power, real estate, construction, as well as kind of qualifications in thermal and LiDAR. We can talk about those other sensors that are coming online in time. Really, and then it even really gets down to the customer level. So for some of our larger insurance customers, really what we're doing is taking our enterprise tier of pilots and standing up a private cloud of pilots that are really trained in their specific workflow. And I know it sounds like a lot of work. And honestly, we also go on like the world's worst summer tour or winter tour. I don't even know what's a good band these days. No, like Imagine Dragons. I don't even know we're not filling Giant Stadium, but we'll go on the road and meet with our pilots and walk them through the relevant training for the bigger customers, especially like in advance of hail season or in advance of hurricane season.
On this topic, we have another drone pilot on the broadcast today. Did you know that?
I got a little intel on that. I did, but yes, I did get a little intel there.
Yeah, he's actually listed or registered at Dronebase, Mr. Lee Boyd. Aren't you licensed, Lee?
I am. I'm a licensed drone pilot. I am registered. I have actually not flown anything for Dronebase.
I know that to my great shame, we got a man in Waco, Texas now.
I know, but I will say it is one of the first things I did because as I got my Part 107, I discovered this Dronebase thing. It was 2 years ago, and I went on, I signed up, and to your credit, it's very simple and it's easy to do, and it's a neat. Very neat platform, and I've read all about how y'all are integrating with other strategic partners to make it even better and capture new data. So, kudos to you on that.
It is my and our entire sales team's mission in life to just be sending more work down to the drone pilot community they could almost possibly handle. We've been really proud to be able to get a few, to get some number of folks on our platform, really their full-time work comes from Dronebase. That's a great win for us. But we're also thrilled just to augment people's kind of book of business. I mean, people have great local relationships, but maybe we just have an ability to go work with an enterprise that's just harder for that local operator to have that enterprise national relationship. But look, we would love to leverage that same skill set and help augment that.
I mean, really, you guys are kind of in the same boat that we are, and that is you have 1099s all over the country, and you try to keep them as busy as you possibly can.
Exactly right.
And because the busier you keep them, there's all kinds of good reasons for that, both for your company and for the individual who's out in the field doing the project.
Again, part of this is I am a true believer, so you have to watch what I say, right? But I mean, we absolutely do envision a world where there are tens of millions of drone flights a year in the near term. And sure, like perhaps the drone industry has a good amount of supply at the moment, but I think very quickly we will be supply constrained, which will be, I think, beneficial for our industry. But I think like that will happen. We will be supply constrained within the next 3-4 years. Period.
I do want to ask you one question, little side thing before we wrap up today, and that is about Y Combinator. So I have two questions there. One is, you consider yourself a tech company. Is that fair to say?
Sure, absolutely, yes.
I mean, if I say to you, what kind of company are you?
I mean, the majority of our budget is spent on software engineering, product, and design. So so yes. I mean, that's we never want to not be that.
I see that your company's alumni, making you, I'm sure, an alumni of Y Combinator, and I'm particularly interested in that because my younger son Alex, is currently in Y Combinator this semester, or whatever they call the session.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, so that's an
great.
exciting thing.
Well, congratulations to him. Yeah, I didn't really know this, but it's like harder to get into that thing than it is to like Harvard, or they have like a way sub 1% admissions rate or some crazy thing, which I did not even realize at the time. I probably would not have even applied. Luckily, ignorance is bliss.
He's told me that
things,
like 20 times.
Not knowing what you don't know.
He's pretty proud of that. And of course I'm proud too, but was that a helpful process for you guys? I mean, did it make a difference?
It was incredibly helpful. I couldn't recommend it. I couldn't recommend it enough. To be honest, if I had to stack up like Harvard Business School versus Y Combinator, I would really be hard pressed to not say, if you had those two options, you would just go to Y Combinator. If I compare the two, right, it's like one takes 2 years. It costs you a lot of money. It costs you 6 figures. Nobody has any idea what they want to do and spend 2 years sort of like dream vision questing what they want to do with their lives. If that's business school, then I look at Y Combinator. It's a 90-day hardest sprint of your life. They give you 6 figures to build a company, and every person there knows exactly what they're trying to do and build, and has a very concrete, definite vision of the future that they want to exist through a company that they're creating. So I really can't commend it strongly enough. I mean, look, and just we had wonderful mentors there. Our group, my group there was like Justin Kahn, who had started Twitch, Gary Tan, who had started a blogging service and then has started a seed fund subsequently with the founder of Reddit, and then Kat from their team, who had come from a journalism background and was amazing about kind of helping us tell our story. So I really do. I think that what they are good at is, if you are coming with core knowledge and core kind of competency in a technology or industry, they are really good at explaining to you, of the 1,000 things you could be doing today, what are the 3 things you should be doing? And then just some sense of like what the heck actual scale or really fast growth looks like. That can be terrifying, but it's a reality that's kind of worth knowing, right? I mean, I think the goal there was to grow 10% a week. So I was trying to grow our drone flights 10% a week. And you put that together week on week, I think anybody, actually that is a lot, even for a week. Some companies don't do that in a year, but even if it sounds, even if you go in there very confident, I'll grow 10% a week, sure thing. Sure, when the numbers are small, like you can do it. But if you can actually achieve that over time, the compounding effect is really incredible. So, well, congrats to your son. Obviously,
well, thank you.
Excited to what is this company called? Are we allowed to say? Okay, we keep it on the.
That's a great question. Can I get back to you on that?
Of course, no. Congratulations to him. I think that I would recommend it to anyone, particularly if it's sort of your first time in a kind of a high growth technology startup environment. It is a little different animal, and they're very good at explaining how to prioritize your
Mm-hmm.
time, and how to focus on growth.
So speaking of growth, let's talk. I mean, obviously you're in a crazy growth industry. Let's talk about 2024. What are you thinking about 2024? What's your business, your industry? Where's it going to be? What's going to be up? Is there going to be a drone in every garage? I mean, what's going to happen?
I don't think so. That's a good question. I mean, look, I think that whereas now, when we go do a drone, let's say we go do a drone flight in insurance, it is still quite an event. The homeowner, they don't have to be there, but more often than not, they really want to be there. Half the neighborhood comes out to check it out. It's a kind of an exciting / scary / at least worthy of people putting it on Instagram or something. I very much look forward to the day that normal drone flights are boring. It was sort of a boring industry when I got into it. I'm excited for the day it becomes boring again. If I'm just looking at if I just think about 2024, if I just look out over my horizon, I'm looking out the window right now. It's like, if I look below the horizon, I see, buildings, roads, I see a train track, I see electric wires, I see kind of all of human ingenuity and progress. If I look above the horizon, and I'm in Los Angeles, it's very busy airspace, I don't see a single airplane or helicopter. There's nothing in the air, right? I do think that drone technology, I think you will see regular drone overflight by 2024. I think the FAA is already working on that rule of overflight of people as a regular, clear rule that's going to happen in operations. But I think really via drone technology, you'll see just human ingenuity come into the air, where much more active airspace and much more active drone flight in airspace is common, if not boring. I think just from a basic, from Dronebase perspective, I really just want to for us, it really is this sort of decidedly unsexy Amazon-like attack on just the core operational axes of our business, right? I mean, just having an incredibly simple API for customers that can scale to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of drone flights. Today in the United States, we're comfortable signing up for a 48 to 72 hour turnaround from 20 megapixel imagery flights. We would love for that to be 24 to 48, and then just all 24. Today we're able to do that in a day or 2 or 3 days on 20 megapixel imagery. We're very interested in bringing higher value sensors to bear, like thermal sensors, other kind of higher value sensors and LiDAR sensors to bear, where you can get that same sort of response time with a much higher value add sensor. And just increasing sort of reliability on the data set and on the service that we render, increased automation of the flight, where we think a lot about how many flights can one drone pilot do a day. We're always trying to automate everything we do, including the flight.
Sure.
So maybe a pilot can get, maybe 3 years ago we could get like 3 flights done a day. Maybe today it's more like 8 to 10. Would love to, our technology is getting so good that pilot can do 20 to 30, right? You're becoming just more of a systems operator, systems maintainer, setting down systems in the morning, picking them up in the afternoon, and then probably eventually to really remote fleet management over time. We like an incremental approach to that whole kind of playing out as well. We like to be active in the market now, not just kind of try to get to the utopian 7-year out solution. So we'd like to be in the market now. Long answer to your question, but I'm excited for 2024 if you can't tell.
Well, sounds like you already have a to-do list. What about insurance? I mean, most of our audience is mostly insurance people and thinking about insurance and concerned about insurance. What about drones and insurance in the future? What do you see there?
Yeah, look, I think for us, that's a core vertical. I see that being a very valuable vertical both today and increasingly in the future. Like I said, I think that this hardware and Dronebase as a company are really best in world at 1 square mile or less data capture. What tends to look like, basically all buildings fit into that parcel And all buildings, in many ways, it's kind of the whole life cycle of a property is more similar than dissimilar. So if I think about the kind of the 2x2 of today in commercial insurance, drones today already extremely relevant in both commercial underwriting and claims. Certainly, obviously claims are just very valuable on the commercial side, but even on the underwriting side, we're finding, a drone inspection as you prepare a underwriting policy more and more relevant. In the kind of the residential 2x2, I think that residential claims more and more are becoming kind of fair game, where you might expect a drone to do the data capture side. Residential underwriting is still, that's at a price point which is still kind of hard to approach. Perhaps we get there at some point, especially if you can do sort of like neighborhood or area capture. You look down a row of 12 homes, maybe a State Farm, an Allstate, a USAA, a small medium provider. If you could get plugs into all of those and really do neighborhood capture, then even something like residential underwriting might be more plausible. I really do think that from there, I think that like where drones are most relevant is still operational. I don't proclaim that we can do everything an independent adjuster could do. I think there's a lot of cases where we can be better, faster, and more affordable on the data collection side. I think that the folks who are really laser focused, non-drone companies that are solving the insurance industry's problems, that they will go deeper and deeper on the analysis of those problems, and just keep kind of winning that vertical. But I do think that drones will play a bigger and bigger role in the acquiring of data and data sets. I'm a little skeptical. Anytime I hear sort of machine learning, AI, et cetera, my kind of feelers go up. And then if you add machine learning or AI to drones, then now you're like buzzwords on buzzwords. That's even more concerning. I still think I really do think we're just a kind of I like this technology as it pertains to operations, executing better, faster, more affordably in the field, rather than going like to the 29th decimal analysis solution for 20 different industries. And I think that's how it'll break out in insurance.
Do you ever see the drone coming inside the house? I mean, that's one of the obvious limitations currently.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
I mean, it's a hard problem. It's a really hard problem. I would love if it did. There are systems what Skydio is doing. Like, there's some work that Skydio has done with a ton of sensors on a system. I mean, I'm always really impressed and amazed by how quickly DJI moves on the technology. But look, homes are tough. Those are tight spaces. I still think this is most relevant for external capture. We may get there on the internal side, but I think it's more plausible that you got your 20-minute automated flight, the drone, you hit the button on the drone, it goes up and does its thing, and the person goes inside the house and just tackles that. I think human and a robot, really powerful together. Robot alone, not so good. Human alone, not so good. It's when they can kind of work together that they're very effective. So I could see more just the flight portion is so automated that the human, their time is freed up to do kind of higher value tasks that just a human should do. And yeah, I've flown a lot inside different places, and it never ceases to raise my blood pressure.
I saw a service or a drone service when we were doing our homework for this episode that flies around the inside of warehouses, right, and does inventory.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable because you kind of have a
bigger airspace.
You clear out 40 to 50 feet. Like there's no encumbrances there. And I say this to some degree because there is work being done in the military context where you're less concerned that, hey, the rotor's gonna hit a wall. Where you are doing internal,
or take out the cat.
Right, exactly. Yeah, both of those things are bad. Maybe the cat's probably worse of the two.
Maybe the cat had it coming.
The military is working hard to solve some of those problems, and those are very non-trivial, and just seem to require a different system with just a sensor suite that is really beefed up compared to where it is today. Look, I'm a true believer on this. Like I'm always happy to take the optimistic view, but I think man, that Z-axis, there's not much up there. It gives you a lot of tolerance and slack. Every home, every building's a little different. Yeah, I like those use cases where it's a warehouse. You can kind of clear the decks from 40 to 50 feet or something like that. Still a little more skeptical of just broad internal capture.
Well, listen, we're up against your time. In fact, we've gone over on your time, and I apologize for that.
No problem. It's been a great conversation.
But so this just goes to show that we're going to have to do an episode 2 with Dan.
That's right.
So you kind of talked yourself into that on by accident, and we really appreciate you doing that, because content like yours is exactly why our podcast exists. We want to get the word out about these different processes, technologies, ideas to our industry, and that's our mission. And we really appreciate how you've done that today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. My pleasure. Really happy to circle back with you after working a bit in the field, and excited for what both our, what 470 Dronebase can do together, and excited for both the insurance and drone industries as they use more and more great technology.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So put a placeholder in your calendar in the future for episode 2. Okay.
Will do. If you're back in South Beach, then I'm gonna be curious. I'm gonna question it though.
Me too.
I think it's more likely I'll be
once is a anomaly, twice is a pattern.
Exactly.
I think it's more likely I'll be in Venice with you.
Oh, so, there you go. Okay. Well, I can't hardly fault you for that.
Okay.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
Make sure you pack a food allergy if you're going to come to Los Angeles. So you gotta have one to live there.
Another really interesting episode, don't you think?
I do. Just a lot of great information out of there. Really, I'm always interested in everybody's story. And today we really got a good look into his story, where he came from, everything that he dreamed. It's interesting because he's had this idea to start a company for so long, and he was really smart about it.
Sure.
He said, "Hey, let me get out of debt. Let me get in the right place so I can really focus on it," with the help of his wife, of course. But what a neat story he has, and
really interesting. I mean, I would think that most mere mortals or normal people would just not be able to contain their enthusiasm and excitement and would rush headfirst into this. But he he had the idea, but there was a number of steps that he took. I mean, steps: Harvard Business School, Goldman, Wall Street. I mean, those are remarkable things that he did. But was able to be patient and thoughtful, and it looks like that all has paid off.
His comments on Y Combinator were interesting. Me and you got to know Y Combinator months and months ago. We were listening to a podcast, and they were talking all about Y Combinator, and to hear them really explain the importance of it, that really opened up my mind to how these startup companies can go from the small seed ideas to really these giant trees and really grow some deep roots.
Right. It sounds like one of the interesting things I got out of the thing today was how he views his company, and it's operations, execution. That's how he sees. I think he sees it as what we do is gather data, and what you do, and then we give the data to you. So he's really he's really defined his niche well.
He has, and he doesn't want to overstep his boundaries. He's being smart, and I think that's from the lessons learned early. Because if he had jumped into creating this company when he first wanted to, he might not have been as focused. He was able to go to Harvard Business School. He was able to go to Y Combinator. He was able to really make this vision and understand why he needs to stay within the lines. And he's done a great job of it. I see drone-based advertisements everywhere. And as I said, if you're a drone pilot, Dronebase is a great place to go.
Right. And major partnerships. that they're involved in, because they kind of dominate their space, and they have a significant head start. Plus, obviously, a CEO who's very, very smart, very, very well spoken, and has a great vision about where he's going.
Yeah, he's very driven. You can tell that. He didn't go all the way into it, but I think his future vision is a large need for drones. I think he sees that we have a lot of drone pilots. They have some drone inspections. However, in the future, there's going to be a ton of use of drones, and I think, as we saw with State Farm announcing, their newest information from the FAA, that they're going to be able to fly in certain scenarios where you previously could not, over people or other buildings out of line of sight, even in at night, is now being announced by the FAA. His world is going to continue to open up for the need for drones.
Sure. I mean, when you think about all the ways that drones can be used, all the ways that data can be calculated, and then the new ways that the data can be digested.
Yeah.
One of the strategic partners I saw him have was with a company that does 4D. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
but they have a strategic partnership with some kind of technology company that's doing 4D work with the data that they capture.
Yeah.
I mean, remarkable.
It is, because they're able to take these images of these buildings and instantaneously turn them into these 4D images on a screen, where you used to have to do it in post-production. You used to have to spend time and money and design what you think it looks like, and you're able to take it and say, this is the exact building. This is what it will look like, or is going to look like. It's great.
Well, I think that aside from the work that we've done with them ourselves, and the work that we've done with them in the future, I'm sure that everybody who's listening to this podcast and who works in our industry can count on the fact that they're going to be seeing a lot of them around. And it's such a big, vast space. We really do need to have them on another time to cover this whole area.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, listeners, that does it for this week's episode of FNO InsureTech. We thank Dan Burton so much for being with us. And Anthony, is there something that you want to remind our listeners about?
Yeah, if you guys that are listening, please make sure on whatever platform it is that you've caught this edition of FNO InsureTech, make sure you're following or subscribing. And the best way to support us and let us know how we can get better is to actually leave a review and a rating. So we would love to hear your feedback and help us improve.
Yeah, please rate us, please subscribe, and please join us next time.